Hi Pisces, welcome. This is Taurus Tarot and I'm Joy, and this is your reading. So, just so you know, the way I understand tarot to work is that there is this quantum field where all possibilities exist. And we know that in fact that is true, that there is at any given time an infinite number of possibilities that exist for you. Quantum physics tells us this, right? And it just kind of depends on the current path that you're on as far as what possibilities become the most likely for you, okay? And so with tarot, like that knowledge, it already exists, like past, present, future, it all exists in the now. And so when we look for guidance from the tarot, we are actually, tapping into that energetic field where all information exists. And we're asking that message come through for us, whatever it may be. And tarot helps us interpret that message by using pictures as a way to kind of understand the energy that is important for you to know at that specific time, right? Or of course you can ask specific questions and then that information comes as answers to those questions. For these readings, they're general, and so I like to ask, what is important for Pisces to know? What is important for Pisces to know? And so the message does come through in general terms, right? Because there is no one specific person attached to the question. It's more just the group of Pisces. And so that's kind of how it works. But so you have to take it, with a grain of salt. The energy might be more intense for some Pisces and less intense for others. It may be past, present, or future for some, and something different for others. So that's just kind of the way it works, and I hope that makes sense to you. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so we have the Two of Pentacles. Okay. We have the Moon, love the Moon. We have Temperance, Page of Cups, and the Seven of Wands. Okay? Yeah, so the message coming through here is there's some balancing that's happening in your, in your physical 3D reality. There's some balancing that is happening, but I feel like it's a good thing. It's something that is necessary for you. Sometimes twos are about choices. The Two of Pentacles, showing this man juggling the pentacles. So he's kind of like, trying to balance out his realities. And juggling, there's this element of like, you don't want to drop the ball either, right? Like you want to keep them both going up in the air, but one wrong move and it could kind of just like all fall apart, sort of, right? So there is almost this feeling of like having to be very careful and not necessarily like being in the flow. It's almost like you're constantly aware of these energies that are not necessarily balanced. Yeah, you're constantly aware of kind of this push and pull sort of thing, whereas in flow it's kind of this energy of just moving along, like riding the wave, right? Just moving along. This is speaking of something very different than that. Yeah, this is like kind of trying to keep it all afloat almost. Okay, all right. And next to that, we have the Moon and we have Temperance. So these are two really wonderful cards. The Moon is really speaking about, the subconscious, the hidden. Moon is also about very feminine energy. And so this is interesting here though, because we have these two like wolves there, kind of howling up at the moon, and then in the middle here there's like this little device. I'm not quite sure. It's like a clock, and it's like you can see the hands of the clock and the mechanics of it, just sort of like how it all works together. And so this is kind of really speaking to me of like understanding how the subconscious mind is working to kind of move everything, right? So like here you have the hands of the clock, and the hands of the clock are moving, right, to denote time and sort of like counting time. But behind that, there's all these mechanisms at work that are turning, and you know, when one turns, it turns the other one, all these like gears, right? And it's just, anyway, it's just really talking to me of understanding how your subconscious is at play in this juggling of life, right? This balancing of life, this trying to keep it all together, trying to you know, keep from dropping the ball. And so the moon here is really asking you to be aware of everything that is at play, because when you're in this place, right, there's much more at play than what is immediately evident. And so it's important to look beneath the surface and to see what it is behind the scenes that is you know, playing into your current 3D reality. Okay, I hope that makes sense for you. And then here, right, so between, you know, sandwiching the moon is the Two of Pentacles, and then also the Temperance card. And Temperance is also very much about balance. And so I just heard shadow self, right? The shadow self and the light body self, right? Those two things have to be in balance. And so sometimes, so our shadow self is kind of like our darker side, right? Our little bit, you know, the kind of the side that we don't readily share with everyone because of the feelings that we get that it is you know, not our better self, or it is not the side, the aspect of ourself that is desirable, or you know, or has value. And so for whatever, you know, for all of that, it remains hidden. It remains our shadow self. But this Temperance card is really talking about balancing those two out, and really, like, you know, acknowledging your shadow self, acknowledging your darker thoughts or your darker dispositions, or whatever it is, right? Acknowledging them. It doesn't mean that you have to indulge in them and give into them, but it is important to acknowledge them, because if you don't, then either you are giving into them or you're trying to suppress them and bury them, and that's not healthy either. We all have our shadow sides. We all have our sides that are you know, that we might deem as less desirable, or we might deem as embarrassing, or whatever it may be. We all have those parts to ourselves. The trouble is that sometimes, you know, when on social media, you know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, the side that we are seeing or that people are choosing to put forward is their highlight reel, right? They're the part of themselves that are the parts that they like, you know. And it takes somebody really brave and open and vulnerable to be able to present to the world the parts of themselves that they don't necessarily like, right? But that are nonetheless there and nonetheless part of who they are. And so this Temperance is really speaking about, you know, having those two sides of self in balance. Yeah. Okay. And then I think, I really feel like that balancing, right? It that acknowledging our darker side, our shadow side, it makes us vulnerable. Not makes us, it allows us to be vulnerable. It allows us to communicate a vulnerability that, we are not perfect. But the important thing, and I think that this is what this card is really speaking of, is that that vulnerability actually opens up to these possibilities of bringing more love into our world, right? Because, we want to be loved for all that we are, right? We don't want to be loved just for our good parts, right? Just for our, our parts that we are openly share with the world because we see them as good or beautiful or, whatever, right? We want to be loved for all of our parts, for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this is really saying to me strongly right now is that, and it is the page, right? And cups are emotion, but I'm feeling love from this for sure. And it's like this beginning of love. It's like this vulnerability that we can show, right? It allows others the opportunity to see that darker side of us and acknowledge it as well, but yet still continue to love us. And that is what unconditional love is, right? So even being like with your children, for example, okay? You can see a child and it's beautiful, loving, perfect, child, say a teenager, that's a good example, who, tries hard in school and brings home good grades. And then suddenly, you find out they've been, sneaking out of the house. But this is like something that teenagers do, it's something that they're experimenting with boundaries and rules and what it's like to break those boundaries and rules and how it makes them feel and why they do it and whether they do it again. Those are all important parts of learning and growing, right? But if we catch that teenager doing something like that and we come down strong and hard on them for, oh, they're bad, you're a bad kid, you don't follow the rules, you don't listen, you're bad, that's hugely damaging, right? For for someone who is starting to learn about themselves. Yeah. And so on the other hand, we can approach it as, okay, I understand that you are at that age where, you're experimenting with boundaries and rules. But I want to tell you that the reason why we have this rule that, you have to ask permission to, when you want to go somewhere, or at least let me know, is so that I can know that you are safe. And if something does happen, I know exactly where you are so that I can, be there to support you or whatever it is, right? Same thing in a relationship. You may see your partner get really upset and perhaps turn into a Karen at the store or something like that. And that's like this shadow side of that, of your partner that you may not have been aware of. And you understand it, you understand that your partner gets triggered by certain things because of past experiences that haven't been completely healed yet. But you don't turn your back on your partner when you see their shadow side. You continue to love them. And in fact, just like your children, right? You continue to love them. And in fact, you love them more because you know that they are imperfect. And you know that, that in that imperfection, lies this beauty, right? And so that's kind of this whole message that is happening here for you. And it is here with the Seven of Wands there too, right? And I feel like that in a way you will have to defend yourself. You will have to not necessarily defend yourself, but you will have to continue to push the haters away, sort of, and defend yourself in the sense of you have an idea of what is truth and what is right, and you stick to it regardless of what anybody else is saying or doing. Yeah, that's kind of what that is. So all together, putting all of these things together, you know, sometimes, you know, we are vulnerable, and we feel like, you know, we're just one dropped ball away from it all falling apart. And that's important to recognize those moments, and to go within and understand how the subconscious is working in your outer experience, okay? How the inner experience is really the truth, and how your outer experience is the reflection of that truth, okay? And that to find balance in that, in both the fails and the wins, in the light and the dark, in the you know, the ignorance and the the knowing, right? To find balance in that, to bring those two together in a symbiotic relationship of balance. Yeah. And it opens you up to more love in your life. It opens you up to a deeper, more unconditional love, but also that is a process. That unconditional love, it is a process, like, meaning you don't automatically just gain it like that. There's a process that you go through to understand it. Yeah. And part of it is accepting that light and dark within us individually, and within you know, people in our circles or people out in the world. They all have that light and dark that they're trying to balance as well. But it, you know, in that we find, you know, this, or we move towards finding more unconditional love in our life. And it's an unconditional love is something that we have to stand up for. We have to stand up for it. Everybody deserves unconditional love, because everybody holds that light and dark within them. And sometimes, you know, some people are going to be a little bit off balance and more on the dark side, say. And, you know, that does not make them evil or undeserving of unconditional love. We are all deserving of that unconditional love, and we have to stand up for it and defend it. Okay? So Pisces, that is what it is for you. I hope that made sense. It's good stuff, though. There's some really good stuff here. You know, just remember that you are loved. You are loved. Like, Source will always have that unconditional love for you. And it's important to find that unconditional love for yourself. And once you do, to then allow it to overflow to others, okay? Including and especially allow it to overflow to those who would at first glance appear to be undeserving, okay? There is no such thing. Everyone is deserving of unconditional love, and that's what we really need to spread in this world, okay? We need to release the hate, let go of the hate, let go of the divisiveness, the pitting against you know, one against the other, the left, the right, the Democrats, the Republicans, the blacks, the whites. You know, we have to let go of that hatred, and instead embrace this energy of unconditional love, because that in the end is what is going to save us. Okay? I love you, Pisces. Aloha and Namaste.